Hello, everyone. We are here with Carla Estell, and she's bringing us the talk Backyard Evangelism. Hello, Carla.
Hello, it is so good to be with you today. Thank you so much, everybody who is tuning in, and I'm going to just jump right into it. Let me back up just a minute. So, none of this that happened because we actually planned on doing backyard evangelism. Life just happened and it led from one thing to another. So this is actually a picture of our backyard in Georgia, where we lived for 11 years. That's my youngest daughter, who is now 15. The first thing happened was the backyard Christmas musical. So we had attended a small church where I was in charge of a children's program and was able to do a Christmas musical with the kids. And our kids were 6, 4, 2, and a new baby. And but the following year, we were at another church, and it was a larger church, and I wasn't responsible for anything there, and the opportunity did not arise for the kids to be in a Christmas program. And my daughter was really disappointed. And she said, "But Mommy, I want to do a Christmas musical. You have all the costumes. Can we do it in our backyard?" And that is what we did. We gathered all the neighborhood kids who wanted to be in it, and I made a few extra costumes, and we did a backyard musical in our backyard. So we started with creation, God being our creator, and sang a little song about God being the creator. Each year, that song changed as the kids grew. So we put the hand motions to it. And from there, we moved on to Christ being born, our creator becoming the babe in the manger. This was a picture from another year, so you'll notice there's other kids in the program. Different neighbors joined in on different years. But our focus was always first God being the creator, and then the creator becoming the babe in the manger. And a lot of the kids in the program, they weren't churched. Some of them did not even know the song Away in the Manger, but they learned it through being in the program. So we had the wise men, we had the shepherds and the angels, and it was a lot of work, but it was also very, very rewarding. My oldest children would make a practice CD of all the songs and the verses, and we would pass that out as well. And we had some neighbor children who listened to it over and over and over. So it's not only the kids who learned it, but the parents did as well. So here the shepherds are coming to worship him. Then we also recruited some older teenagers, and this is a good friend of the family who was willing to be the grown Jesus. So we talked about how the babe in the manger grew up and became the lamb on the cross in our risen Lord and Savior. Then afterwards, there'd be great neighborhood fellowship. Oftentimes the fellowship lasted longer than what the musical did. So some years our porch was just packed with neighbors. Other years there was only just a few. But either way, it was always a great time of sharing and whatnot. And it soon became a neighborhood tradition where all the kids just totally looked forward to, when are we doing the musical again? Now the costumes are really pretty easy to make. I used a lot of large t-shirts, and if there's writing on them, you just turn them inside out. The little vest here is simply made out of a pillowcase where you cut sleeve holes, cut a neck hole, and then cut it up the front. This was the first year our little 2-year-old was in it, and most of the time he was twirling off stage, but that's okay. Angel costumes were made out of sheets, and then the wings are just sheer curtains strung on coat hangers. I use tablecloths usually for the wise men capes. If you get an oval tablecloth, you just have to cut that neck hole in it. And then the extra material to make the little hats. Some years we were doing the musical at several different places. We would take it to nursing homes. We would get together with other families and do it in their backyard for their neighbors. And some years it got pretty busy, and the musical would actually get kind of hectic. So there was one year that I decided, I'm not going to do it this year. And so I was in Sunday school class and we were sharing prayer requests, and somebody brought up the Christmas musical and how, oh yeah, we need to be praying that goes well. And I told the class, might not do it this year. It is a lot of work. Sometimes kids aren't real cooperative, my own especially. But I said, if God really wanted me to keep doing this, I would do it. But if it's just me, I don't think I'm going to do it this year. Well, we went from Sunday school class to the sermon, and the sermon was all about how do we show love to our neighbors. And it's like, okay, God gave me the answer. So we went out that afternoon and passed out the little invitations to the neighbor kids, asking them if they wanted to join. And that year we walked all the way to the end of the street and invited a family we had never invited before. And this is Michael and Emily. And not only did they join in and come to practices, but their mom came to all the practices and listened and asked questions, and practice became Bible studies. And long story short, their whole family came to Christ. So here's a picture where we were in a friend's house. This is great to take as a family ministry to go to nursing homes. This is for a shut-in here. And other families would join in with us. And we've taken it to churches before, especially small churches where sometimes they didn't have the means of putting on a musical themselves. So I would send the script ahead of time, and then we would come just for the weekend with the banners, the costumes, practice a few times with the kids. So this is one of those opportunities. Another thing that we did in our backyard, this came about actually from my kids complaining. The little neighbor girls went to public school, and St. Patrick's Day was a fun party day. They had little green footprints going across the room and across their desks. There were games, there was green cupcakes, and my kids said, Mom, public school kids have all the fun. We never have any parties. And I said, well, you know what? We can change that. We can have a St. Patrick's party. And so that's what we did. And so every year we would gather the neighbor kids and have different games. This game here was simply putting the spots on the mushroom. And the mushrooms are made from laundry baskets with brown paper wrapped over them, turned upside down. So it's really rather a simple thing, but the kids have so much fun with it. Other years, I let the kids come up with their own games. So it was kind of like a fall festival in the backyard. This one, they're shooting a rubber band, trying to knock over the clover. This one's a little bowling game. So it really doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just a way for kids to have fun. Then we would always have the green Kool-Aid and the cookies and the candy as a little party. And then my son would dress up as St. Patrick and tell Patrick's story. Now, that was the exciting thing about St. Patrick's Day. It's not all about little green footprints and the shamrock. Patrick was an amazing man. I'll give you just a short little rundown on his story. He was captured as a slave. And he lived in England, and the Irish came over and raided, and he was one that was captured and taken back to Ireland, where he was a slave for over 6 years. Miraculous way that he was able to escape and get back home. But once home, he remembered the people of Ireland and the darkness that they were enslaved by. And God just put it on his heart to return to Ireland. So after training and learning, and that's what he did, he returned to Ireland. For 30 years, he walked from countries across the countryside, witnessing first to the chieftains and then to the people in their area. And Ireland turned from pagan to Christian because a man was willing to surrender his life and go back to the land of his captivity. So it is an amazing story. James didn't necessarily like dressing up and telling the story, but it was part of homeschool education. It was good for him, and he learned to really do a good job with that. And then that evening, it was really fun. We would build a great big bonfire. We'd invite all the neighbors along with their parents. I wouldn't do this just with kids. And my husband would dress up as St. Patrick, and he would come walking out of the woods, talking about what a big bonfire that is, and telling the story of how he started a bonfire in Ireland in order to get the opportunity to witness. And that story is all in the little booklet I'll show you in just a minute. So we would end the bonfire, of course, with s'mores. Oftentimes I'd ask the kids questions and they'd have to get the answer right in order to get their chocolate. So that was just another really fun tradition that not only brought the neighbors together, gave them opportunity to visit and catch up, but also a way of just spreading the truth about God and creation and the need to surrender our lives to Him. So I've put together in the little booklet on backyard evangelism all the ways of making the different costumes, the different skits, the scripts, and also the little coloring booklets. So this is the one about St. Patrick. And you're free to copy these off and hand them out to people, give them to your neighbors. The pages are print ready, but they're not lined up for just reading through. So you actually have to print off the little stories, line them up, staple them down the middle, and then they're easy to read. I also have a little booklet about the Reformation, which happens to be on Halloween. So instead of celebrating Halloween, we would celebrate Reformation Day, the day that Martin Luther tapped up that 95 Thesis on the church door and really started getting people realizing it's all about faith. It's not about works, and you can't buy your way to heaven. So I have a little booklet telling that story as well. Then I have a little booklet, and they're about Santa Claus and how Santa Claus came to be. When our firstborn was born, we did not want to even bring up Santa Claus. Christmas was going to be all about baby Jesus. But then when he was about 2, we realized Santa Claus is everywhere, and there's really no way to avoid it. So instead, I researched into how did Santa Claus come about, and I found the story of Nicholas and how it went from Nicholas to Santa Claus. So that is in here. One word with this one: we never hand this booklet out to kids. We hand it out to the parents, and then let the parents decide if they're ready for their kids to have it. It's just Santa Claus is a kind of a touchy subject sometimes. So we always told our kids the truth, but we would tell them, don't get into arguments and don't mention it to the other kids. A few other family traditions that we have had over the years. One is our Easter hike. We'd get the kids up early before sunrise, pick a spot to go hiking to. After a few years, it became the same spot. It was about a half-a-mile hike out to a lake, and the sun would rise on the other side of the lake. And we would sing songs, and we would talk about Jesus's resurrection. And on the hike out, nobody would talk. we would be quiet and we would think about how sad the women were walking to that tomb that first Easter morning. And then the wonderful news of Jesus being risen from the dead. So this started just as our family, but soon we had other families join in. And before we moved from Georgia, we had a lot of people who joined in. So then we moved, and we actually traveled the country for 2.5 years, telling about creation and doing creation seminars. And unbeknown to us, while we were gone, the tradition of this Easter hike, which we would actually do on Saturday, so as we could spend more time and whatnot, and then still make it to church on Sunday. But this tradition continued. The families kept going. And so a few years later, we were back in Georgia on Easter weekend, and we decided, hey, let's go out and do our hike. And so we called our friends, and they came out, and we met, and it was just going to be the two families, we thought. And we get to the parking lot, and the parking lot was full. Sorry. And there was another dad there saying to all the kids, now remember, kids, we're going to go out quiet and think about how sad the women were as they walked to the tomb. And it was just so cool to know that even though we had left, the tradition had continued, and that there were other kids growing up doing this tradition. And so we just joined in with them that year, and it was really cool. Another tradition that we had that was really fun. My husband is really big into America's godly heritage. And so Thanksgiving is a big thing at our house. And so when the kids were little, I made them Indian and pilgrim costumes, and they played all day in their costumes. And my husband looked at me and said, why don't you make us costumes too? So I said, really? He goes, yes, I would love to be Bradford. So that's what I did. And from that point on, every year at Thanksgiving, I would dig out the costumes, make a few new ones, and everybody would dress up. And it's a tradition that I kind of thought would go by the wayside as the kids were older. But some of the kids really, really liked it. And so they've talked the others into keep doing it. So we have lots of fun with that one. We usually go to Walmart, and it just makes a really fun day of Thanksgiving. And it makes for some great family photos. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share with you and to share about some of the traditions that we have done. And I hope that through this you have picked up some ideas of some things to do with your family and different traditions to start. And again, I've got it all into a booklet. If you would like the booklet, you can just email me and I will send you off a copy. I'd also be free to come if you get a group of moms together and you want to make some costumes. I'll come help you make some costumes. It would really be fun. So thanks again for this opportunity and for joining in.
Thank you, Carla, for bringing that story to us. Those are some really great events and things to try with our families. I really enjoyed it as I was listening, and I appreciate that talk on backyard evangelism.